In the first decade of this century, the Western world lost its grip on reality when a brand new type of human being was conjured into existence by the collision of political activism and medicine. That new type of human was the transgender child. Despite this idea defying everything known about childhood development, large swathes of society seemingly overnight began believing the unbelievable, that children could be born in the wrong body. Today I'm going to explain how that came to be and how the widespread acceptance of this dangerous falsehood led to the worst medical scandal in the history of modern medicine. The seedlings of the idea were sown in psychiatry in the 1980s with the diagnosis of gender identity disorder of childhood. But it needed political activism and the cooperation of endocrinology to bring the idea to life. Because once there was an official diagnosis, along came the medical solution, puberty suppression, developed in the Netherlands in the 1990s. This idea to halt the puberty of gender-distressed youth was actually born out of a failed experiment. When the Dutch realized that the first wave of men in their sex change experiment were unhappy with the results because they didn't look like women, the researchers didn't hang up their lab coats and accept that the experiment had been a failure. Instead, they turned their attention to children, reasoning that intervening sooner would produce more pleasing cosmetic results in adulthood. It was this unfathomable idea that brought the concept of the transgender child to life, because before puberty blockers, it was impossible to lie to a gender nonconforming child, a little boy, and raise him as a girl, or vice versa, with puberty looming on the horizon. But when the Dutch made puberty optional, they handed deeply misguided adults the means to sever children from the reality of their bodies before they were even old enough to understand what that meant. At the same time, a critical shift central to the theme of today's event was unfolding in trans activism. In the 1990s, while the Dutch were launching their experiment on adolescents, early trans activists decided to redefine transgender identities as innate and healthy, rather than rooted in mental disorder or paraphilic desire. This wasn't grounded in new science, it was strategic rebranding. The old labels, while accurate, didn't suit the movement's political goals. The concept of the transgender child, freshly minted by medicine, fit perfectly into this new narrative. If trans identities are innate, then transgender children must exist. And if transgender children exist, then trans identities must be natural, not pathological or deviant. It was a self-justifying loop, circular, compelling, but entirely false, rooted not in evidence, but in ideology. In the decade that followed, so-called trans kids were thrust onto the forefront of what was framed as a civil rights struggle. This devastating convergence of medical, political, and cultural forces ensured that countless children, instead of being given the freedom to grow, mature, and discover different identities, were locked into a lifetime of medicalization, embodying an identity imposed upon them before they were old enough to understand what was at stake. If you pay close attention, you'll see that every story of a so-called trans child, it consists of nothing more than stereotypes. Little boys who like Barbies and princess gowns, and tomboys with short hair and a dislike of dresses. In the first decade